The next thing that kind of happens before we get into modern day is the Kennedy administration. And if there was ever a president that did everything he could possibly do to make everyone mad to want to kill him, I think he was the guy. Not only do you have the attacking of all the secret agencies, all the three-letter agencies, and, coming right out and saying that he wanted to, splinter the CIA into a million pieces, or allegedly, either way, didn't make any moans about it. Went after the mafia that, elected him, got him in office. His dad was in bed with him for years. And, he sicks his brother on them when they get in office. And then the other thing that kind of never gets talked about, Bay of Pigs. But the one thing that doesn't get talked about is the UFO side. And you went into this in the book, which was also fascinating. And I want to just turn it over to you to dive into that a little bit more, too, because it may have been one of the things, and maybe may have been the thing that was the tipping point that ended up with him dying.
That's well said. My research has led me to believe, Kyle, that it was um, definitely one of the things, if not
Mm-hmm.
the thing, that tipped the dominoes to where the CIA uh, killed JFK. And all the documentation coming out now, uh, since Trump has declassified a lot of the JFK stuff, it has only reinforced what I wrote before that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have essentially James Jesus Angleton, you know, who recruited Oswald and kept tabs on him for several years prior to the assassination and days before uh, JFK was assassinated. James Jesus Angleton which was the CIA counterintelligence spy master. Uh, he lowered the threat level of Oswald, which allowed Oswald to be in the vicinity of JFK. Now, that might just be as a patsy, as Oswald claimed, but nonetheless, it shows that the CIA was directing and pulling the strings when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to the death of JFK. So let me unpack all of this and how it all works together and why it matters. So we're going to fast forward in time. We're past the Eisenhower administration. Now we're 1961. There was a famous NATO UFO event where you had essentially some unknown objects. In fact, I think there was about 50 of them that were detected on radar moving from the Soviet Union towards Europe. Um, and everyone is freaking out because is this a missile? What is going
Yeah.
on? Are we under
Attack.
attack?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so just mysteriously, as these objects appeared, they disappeared over the Norwegian Sea. And this left JFK with a gut feeling that um, we are living in fragile times. And if ever there was a time for transparency, saying, this isn't us, we're not firing on you, now is the time, right? And so JFK, this was a wake up call for JFK. All right. So now fast forward to April of 1961, a few months later, the Bay of Pigs incident. The CIA, JFK, could not agree on American involvement in this fiasco. JFK did not want to give air support. The CIA did. It was an utter failure, an American failure. And so this drove a wedge between the CIA and JFK. Moving forward, June 4th, 1961, a couple months later, JFK, his antennas are up. He knows there's some things going on I don't agree with inside the executive branch, inside the CIA. He goes to the Vienna summit, June 4th, 1961. He meets with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. Khrushchev tells Kennedy things that are happening that he is unaware of in his own government.
Mm-hmm.
One of which he is unaware of Operation Palladium. Operation Palladium was this secretive operation, again by the CIA, where we would spoof the Soviets' radar. We were planting false flags. We were making false UFO signals, if you will, on their radar in hopes that we could, lull them to sleep and send our U-2 spy planes into their airspace, and they would not think anything about it. Well, this was highly concerning for the President of the United States that the CIA was doing things that were so could be detrimental to national security and world peace, and
Hmm.
he had no say in it.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was concerning. Now, actually, a few days later, 24 days later, after he returned back from that Vienna summit, learned about Operation Palladium, Nikita Khrushchev, he wrote a letter to the head of the CIA, Alan Dulles, June 28th, 1961. He wrote a letter and said that he wants to know and be briefed on all things pertaining to psychological warfare, i.e., Operation Palladium, and MJ-12 plans, Majestic 12, the
Hmm.
UFO secrecy group. Now, for decades, this alleged letter was dismissed. However, we now know that indeed JFK met with Alan Dulles twice on this date because just a few years ago, Alan Dulles' diary entries and schedule, his calendar was declassified. And indeed, he met with him twice on this particular day. So, this, in my mind, validates the credibility that
Hmm.
this is a genuine, authentic letter. And the reason that he wanted to be briefed on Operation Palladium, MJ-12, is because he was forming a relationship with Nikita Khrushchev, and he wanted to have a transparent and ongoing space program with the Soviets. Okay. This was Kennedy's ultimate goal. And he wanted to even denuclearize the nations, both nations. The CIA didn't like the sound of either of those things. They did not want to denuclearize, and they certainly didn't want to work with the Soviets on some kind of space program. And so, again, he met with Alan Dulles twice on that day, June 28th, 1961. Um, Fast forward a couple of years later, November 12th, 1963, Alan Dulles is suddenly, he's gone. Why is he gone? He's been fired. Okay.
Yeah.
His tension with Kennedy uh, was too much, and he is gone. He's out of the picture, even though many believe he still pulled the strings after he was fired. Um, the new head of the CIA is John McCone. President Kennedy writes a letter to the CIA director, John McCone, and he wants to know and discuss the knowns and the unknowns. The unknowns were a term for UFOs back in that era. And the heading for the letter was he wants a classification review of all UFO files affecting national security. That's pretty significant.
Yep. I would say.
He wants complete transparency, not only for himself, but undoubtedly he wanted to be more transparent as a president
Hmm.
for the American people. And so that letter was just a matter of days before he was assassinated. So what we see is JFK continuing to push the envelope with the CIA, both directors demanding answers about UFOs and what we know about UFOs. Now, the spy master I mentioned earlier, James Jesus Angleton, the counterintelligence head for several administrations, um, he eventually moved out of the CIA, and uh, there was an order to burn documents that was in his secret vault. And so one patriot, the story goes, pulled a document now known as the burned memo from the fire. We have a copy of that document. It is part of the Majestic 12 files. Um, and I talk about it in the book. But the reason why the burn memo is important is because the Byrne memo is essentially a smoking gun. It is a letter from, I believe it's from CIA Director John McCone, um, in fall of 1963, that basically states to the members of the Majestic 12 group that Lancer cannot be allowed to look into our matters any longer. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
reason that's important is because Lancer was the Secret Service name for John F. Kennedy. And
Mm-hmm.
so those are very condemning statements, that they basically wanted to take him out, that he was to be unalived, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
not allowed to continue, because he was pressing them on what they were holding secret regarding UFOs. And so that document is very, very condemning. And so bring it back full picture here, full circle. Again, the declassification of the files pertaining to President Kennedy really underlined that there was a fact pattern that is criminal. And the fact patterns basically points to the fact that the CIA killed JFK, and most likely because of what he wanted to know about UFOs.